Welcome to the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. I'm a former brick and mortar store owner turned retail expert who is passionate about entrepreneurship and has experienced the highs and lows of running a retail business. Whether you're a seasoned retail veteran or an aspiring store owner, consider me your guide on this store owning journey. If you're looking to run a profitable and growing business that doesn't drain you, follow my 6 stages of shopkeeping and subscribe to this show. Join me for a journey of continuous learning where protecting your mind, maximizing profit, and determining your own schedule are a priority. Get ready to work smarter, profit more, and grow your retail business. Welcome to episode 240 of the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. Skip the trip, maximize buying with Faire Wholesale Winter Market. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. Before we get started, you might notice that I sound a little bit different, and I probably do. I have that typical, usual sinus infection that I get every January, and I think I'm on day 4, and every day I wake up, I think, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel better tomorrow morning. And I don't. In fact, I feel worse. But I'm home and I'm comfortable and the weather's really ugly outside and I'm not venturing out. So I decided, go ahead and record, Kathy, and you can rest after. Before I start in this episode, I want to give a listener shout out to Katie of Affordable Treasures in Los Gatos, California. Katie sent me a DM on Instagram recently and she said, I started listening to your podcast for the first time in November to get my mind off of politics and focus on something healthy. I'm absolutely loving it. I started with a few recent episodes, then decided to go back to the very beginning and do the whole thing. I'm on episode 51 at the moment. It's really helped me to focus my mind and is giving me lots of inspiration. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate it. I do appreciate it when I get DMs, when all of you leave me podcast reviews on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you may be able to leave a review. And we will go ahead and link Katie's Instagram account and her website in the show notes in case you want to check it out. So let's get started on this episode. Attending in-person wholesale market events like those in Atlanta, Las Vegas, or Dallas, and there's a lot more, it all has so many benefits. I want to say that first. I know firsthand. There's nothing quite like it. In fact, I will have FOMO this year, in particular this month of January, because I won't be attending any in-person markets for the first time in many years. When you're in showrooms, you get to see and touch products. You get to meet with your sales reps. You get inspired by incredible merchandising and displays. You get to talk to other retailers. You get special and exclusive offers. I can list lots of other benefits. However, those market trips are an investment of both time and money. Some retailers attend market, and sometimes they attend back-to-back markets. In fact, there's one Master Shopkeepers member who's attending 3 back-to-back in January. In fact, I think she's attending all 3, Atlanta, then Dallas, then Vegas. And sometimes they're extended trips. Maybe it's one market, but you've decided to stay there for 7 days, the full week, so that you can take your time at market. But when you're doing back-to-back markets, that can be 10 days or longer. It just depends on the size of your business and your buying budget and your needs. But in attending an in-person market event, the expenses add up. There's flights. Just for one flight, it can be $300 to $600 round trip. Hotels can be $150 to $300 per night. Then there's food that you're paying for, ground transportation, parking if you're driving there. I mean, really easily, some of these trips can be $1,500 to $3,000 per person. Now, if you're really frugal and savvy, I know it can be cheaper. I get it. You might be within driving distance, so you're not paying for airfare. Maybe you grabbed an Airbnb for a really affordable price. But generally, I know from talking to other store owners and going to market myself that it's an investment. But for today's episode, I also know that not every indie retailer has a buying need for attending in-person markets. So for instance, we can have a vintage or antique vendor. We can have a vintage or antique store owner who has a vendor mall and maybe she just fills one booth in that store, in her entire store, with products that she sources from market or that she buys at wholesale. And then there are retailers who make most of their products in the store, and maybe they only need to fill a handful of categories or product lines with products that they buy at wholesale. I also know of retailers who offer services, and retailers only a small portion of their business. So again, their buying needs are less than a full retail business. Or maybe it's a brand new retailer. I remember those days. Those first few years we were open, we did not go to market, and we had to kind of figure out where could we go to buy wholesale items. That was an interesting journey. Or maybe you don't have a budget for buying trips quite yet. It's on your, set of goals. Maybe you plan on doing it in 26 or 27. There's a variety of reasons why not every store owner goes to market, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm sure there are other scenarios too where a buying trip doesn't make sense for an independent retailer, and sometimes it's circumstantial. Maybe it's a busy family schedule. Maybe you just had a baby. Maybe you're being a caretaker for a loved one, or you're sometimes low on funds. Whatever it is, it's okay. No judgment. Don't beat yourself up if you can't go to market this year or if you've never been. Skipping the trip, saving thousands of dollars, and still getting access to vendors, products, and deals is possible without a trip to market. And this wasn't the case for me when I started as an indie retailer in 2013 with my sister. But it is possible now because of online wholesale marketplaces like Faire Wholesale. Now, there's a bunch of them. Just in particular, I'm talking about Faire today. Faire's Winter Market for 2025 is scheduled for January 22nd to the 24th. So it is just around the corner because this podcast episode is going to publish on January 16th, 2025. And then the people with an insider account, you get access to Faire's Winter Market on January 21st. So really, from the date that this publishes, that's 5 days away. If you aren't familiar with Faire Wholesale, it's an online marketplace where store owners can buy products for their stores at wholesale prices. If you sign up for their Insiders program, you get early access to market events like this, and you get special deals, I believe. Plus, you sometimes get free shipping with certain vendors. Not all vendors, but you get free shipping too on some of the vendor orders that you place. So for those of you where it doesn't make sense to travel to a market event this year, maybe you can consider dedicating a full day to something like Faire's Winter Market instead. You might be thinking, Kathy, I already buy from Faire all the time, and I realize this, but oftentimes they're quick searches, fast reorders, there's no strategy involved, and there certainly isn't enough time for a thorough browsing and search session. I know this because this was me on Faire. It's exactly what I did. I would go and I would try to find something quickly, or I would reorder something. I really didn't dedicate a full day to it. So what I'm recommending is that you make it an event for yourself and make it a day that truly means something in terms of your planning, strategy, and buying.
This episode is brought to you by my new free resource, a ChatGPT guide for retailers. There is no other tool that has saved me as much time in 2024 as ChatGPT has. My new guide will help you learn about this free artificial intelligence tool. Yes, it's free, and it's not as intimidating as it sounds. I share 14 ways retailers are using the tool now to save them time and effort. I also share real store owner examples, and the results from one search will blow your mind. Visit savvyshopkeeper.com/ChatGPT to sign up for this free guide.
So if you think about it, I kind of laid out the expenses for an in-person market event, but an online wholesale buying day, your expenses, you won't have the travel expenses. You'll save travel time, you'll save money in incidentals and meals, although you're going to see that I'm going to suggest treating yourself to something special when it comes to meals that day. You'll save time navigating massive markets, although you will turn around and invest that time into searching Faire, and you'll save time recovering from the travel tip if travel wipes you out. So really, an investment for a day like this, even if you're splurging and maybe renting an Airbnb with a biz bestie and going for one night, I mean, it's just going to be in the hundreds versus $1,500 to $3,000. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a buyer for your store, you could fall into 3 camps here. Camp 1, you're like, I only go to markets in person. In person only is my strategy. You might be that diehard in-person market person and thinking, no, wait, Kathy, I'm not doing that. I have my trip planned and I only do markets in person because I do my best buying when I can see and feel and touch things. And I get that. Camp 2 is virtual only. You might be thinking, Kathy, I never considered this. Tell me more. What would this look like? Because I tend to do my ordering from catalogs, but I've never really considered dedicating a full market day to myself and doing that virtually. And then Camp 3 is hybrid. Maybe you already attended an in-person market, but you can still use another opportunity to buy more. So you've been to market or you're heading to a market, but you're intrigued by the idea of doing this virtual version for yourself. No matter which camp you're in, remember, you do what's best for you and your business. I've shared several podcasts in the past about attending some of the big in-person markets. We will be sure to link them all in the show notes. Episode 208 was 5 takeaways from attending America's Mart as an observer. Episode 158 was a podcast episode I did on Las Vegas Market. It was my first trip there and tips for retail owners. And then episode 226 was when I went to Off-Price Show in Vegas last year. And that was titled, Is Off-Price Show a Good Fit for Your Buying Strategy? Again, we'll link them all in the show notes. And I also have a 5-part lesson that's free for those of you who have America's Mart as part of your future buying plans, but feel a little overwhelmed at attending such a big market event like Karen and I felt before we went to Atlanta that first time. That 5-part lesson is really helpful and it's completely free. We will also have that linked in the show notes. For today's podcast topic, though, I'm here with some tips for creating an impactful and fun virtual buying day for yourself. So let's get started. One is you want to make it a fun and productive day. So you can do this solo. You can create like a cozy little workspace with your favorite snacks and a playlist of music that gets you in the buying mood. Or you can do this in a group. Maybe you can invite fellow retailer friends to join you for a virtual in-person buying session. Maybe you can reserve a room at a local coffee shop. And then you can share vendor tips with each other. If you have a biz bestie, maybe you rent an Airbnb and make it a short getaway. Now, if you're going virtual to save money, maybe that doesn't make sense. But if you're not going to an in-person market for other reasons, maybe a one-night getaway works for you. And it is in budget. I'm hosting 2 check-ins on January 21st for Master Shopkeepers members. So this will be an opportunity for us to share what we're seeing, what deals are worth checking out, and what new brands we're spotting. It's so incredibly helpful when you're in a room. This will be a Zoom room with all of us sharing what we're finding. There are lots of opportunities to get good deals on Insider Day or even throughout the whole winter market, and sometimes you miss them, so having other people share them with you can be really helpful. What I love about opportunities like this is how master shopkeepers, they get to know each other, their business models, and then once we get to know these people, we can point out particular vendors or brands that we've spotted that fit with their business model or fit with what they typically sell in their store. So it's like you have an assistant buyer. It's just really cool to see when this happens in master shopkeepers. And of course, you want to set the scene. Can you use a second monitor or a tablet for browsing Faire while taking notes on your computer or in a notebook? Can you treat yourself to a fancy coffee or a really nice lunch that gets delivered to you? Can you have really good snacks that day? You all know, like, I often talk about food because I do love it, and that's part of my reward system sometimes. Can you set boundaries? If you plan on doing this from home, make sure it's a day where you're alone and or you won't be interrupted. I think that's why getting away to a coffee shop or a small event venue that you can rent if you're doing this in a group or going to an Airbnb is incredibly important because we want to turn off all those notifications and stop the ability. We want to keep people from interrupting us. So what can you do to create that environment for yourself? And then, of course, you want to stay focused. If it's helpful, dedicate time blocks to specific product categories, for example. So maybe you're going to say, From 10 a.m. to noon, I'm going to focus on gifts and seasonal items. From 1 to 3, I'm going to focus on apparel or accessories. And then from 3 to 5, home decor and miscellaneous. Now, I'm kind of throwing out random categories, but you would have to create this for yourself. What works for you and your business model? Okay, so you created your agenda, but what can you do in advance to set yourself up for success? This is the next part. Prepare your buying strategy. First, you want to set your budget. So that means you want to go ahead and look at your inventory reports and find out, what did you sell last year? What do you need to buy for this year? Can you use that sales data to determine categories that need a refresh? Can you avoid overbuying? What can you do to set that budget or keep yourself from overbuying? And then, of course, don't forget to restock bestsellers. When you're exploring new products, that's fun, of course, but make sure you're ordering items that consistently perform well in your shop. You want to make sure that you're allowing time to do this too, because you don't want to neglect those bestsellers. And then number 3 is understand Faire's benefits. If you're new to Faire, like I mentioned, you get market discounts and promotions. If you sign up for Insider, you get free returns for select vendors. You get low minimums. That's really nice. Sometimes you can walk into a showroom at market events and they tell you that their minimum is 1,000. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's just a couple hundred. But some of those vendors that you order from, if you're a first-time buyer, it can feel like you don't have enough money or enough budget to order from them. And then personalized recommendations based on your shop's profile. That's a benefit that you get from Faire too, because once you start buying, it's nice to see that Faire is kind of feeding you, hey, maybe you'll like this vendor, or maybe you'll order from this vendor. And then you want to use discounts wisely, of course. How can you maximize savings by taking advantage of Faire's exclusive event promos, especially for winter market events like this? Plan future buying cycles. Track your orders, delivery dates, and spending. What can you do to help you track all of that as you're buying? You don't just want to buy recklessly. And then here are some tips for finding the right vendors. 1, start with Faire's recommendations. See what they're offering up. 2, use the search options. You can search by product category, price range, I even think geography, and then by certain categories like sustainable or women-owned or handmade. I even think there's an option to search by US only. And then number 3, leverage vendor reviews and photos. Make sure that you're looking. So you see now, as I'm talking about all of this, that if you dedicate a whole day to this, it's going to give you more time to do some of these things, because I probably didn't do that enough in my own buying. I didn't take the time to look at vendor reviews and photos. And we all know that's subjective sometimes. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but it is helpful to review and look at that information. And can you request samples? Like, can you actually reach out to the vendor and establish a relationship and ask them for samples of anything first? Oftentimes when we go to in-person markets, you can have those conversations. So don't underestimate the option or the ability to chat with these vendors and send them messages and ask questions before you actually buy from them. So it's time to wrap this up. Faire's Winter Market is a game changer for independent retailers who want to save time and money while still curating a good product mix for their shops. It's an opportunity to stay ahead of trends and build relationships with unique vendors too. I mean, I think of all the new vendors that I found on Faire that I may not have found at market because they weren't selling at market. And you can do all of this without leaving home, even if it isn't quite the same experience as in-person market events. And you can all tell I'm a fan of that too. So block your calendar, grab a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage, dress in your most comfy clothes, pre-order that special lunch and or dinner, depending on when you're doing this. Get your snacks. If my sister was hearing this, she'd be chuckling. And dive into Faire's Winter Market, I would say with confidence and a strategy. Like, that's what you want to do. If you're dedicating a full day to this, what are the things that you can do to set yourself up for buying success? And if you're in Master Shopkeepers, make sure that you add those 2 time blocks. We'll have it listed under events so that you can join us, so that we can check in with each other, make recommendations to each other. And I have access to Faire too, so I will be in there browsing as well. If you want to see the show notes to this episode or find links to anything I mentioned, you can visit my blog at savvyshopkeeper.com /episode 240. And if you found this episode helpful and you know another store owner who may not be able to go to market this year or is still craving that experience but hasn't budgeted for it yet, please share this episode with them. Until the next episode, be savvy and boss up.